Marcus Williams crawled into a burning car. Gasoline soaked his knees. Fire ate through the dashboard 2 feet from his face. A woman he'd never met hung unconscious from her seatbelt, bleeding, 30 seconds from death. He had every reason to walk away. A 7-year-old daughter at home, no wife, no family safety net. If he died in this fire, his little girl would be alone in the world. He went in anyway. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody could have known, was that the stranger he was about to pull from those flames would tear his entire life apart and rebuild it into something he never believed he deserved. But that comes later. Before we get there, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this story. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. The alarm went off at 4:48 a.m. like it did every morning, and Marcus Williams hit the button before the second beep. He'd trained himself to wake before the sound could travel down the hall to Zoe's room. That child needed every minute of sleep she could get. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, rubbing the heels of his palms against his eyes. His back ached from yesterday's shift. 8 hours replacing corroded pipes in the sub-basement of Langford Corp, while men in suits walked above him on marble floors, never knowing his name, never knowing he existed. He stood up and his knee popped loud enough to make him wince. 34 years old, he muttered to himself. Body of a 60-year-old. The hallway was dark. He moved through it by memory. 3 steps to the bathroom. Avoid the spot where the floorboard creaked. Don't bump the table with Denise's photo on it. He bumped it anyway. He always bumped it. His hand shot out and steadied the frame before it could fall. In the dark, he couldn't see her face, but he didn't need to. He'd memorized every detail. The way she tilted her head when she laughed. The gap between her front teeth she hated and he loved. The look in her eyes the last time she was conscious. Not afraid, not sad, just tired. So tired. Lupus, that's what killed her. Not a car crash, not a bullet, not anything dramatic enough to make the evening news. Just her own body turning against itself, slowly, quietly, while Marcus held her hand and Zoe played with dolls in the waiting room. Too young to understand that Mommy wasn't coming home. 2 years. 2 years since the hospital chaplain put a hand on his shoulder and said words Marcus couldn't remember because his ears had stopped working the moment the heart monitor flatlined. He showered in 4 minutes, dressed in his gray maintenance uniform with Langford Corps stitched on the chest, made coffee in the kitchen. Not in Denise's mug. Never in Denise's mug. That one stayed in the cabinet where he could pretend she'd be back for it someday. At 5:30, he started on Zoe's lunch. Turkey sandwich, no crust, apple slices, 2 cookies he'd baked himself on Sunday, because Denise always said store-bought cookies were giving up on joy. He wrote a note on a napkin like he did every day. You are brave. You are smart. You are loved. Daddy. Denise had started that tradition. Marcus kept it going because stopping felt like letting another piece of her die. At 6:15, he heard small feet padding down the hallway. Daddy? In here, baby girl. Zoe appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hair a glorious mess of braids that were 3 days past their prime. She clutched a stuffed elephant named Gerald that Denise had given her on her 5th birthday. I had the dream again, Zoe said quietly. Marcus's chest tightened. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. The one about Mommy? Zoe nodded. She was in the garden, the one with the yellow flowers. She was waving at me, but I couldn't get to her. There was glass between us. Marcus pulled her into a hug. She smelled like kid shampoo and sleep. You know what I think? I think that's Mommy's way of telling you she's watching. She can see you even if you can't get to her. You think so? I know so. Zoe pulled back and studied his face the way she sometimes did, with an intensity that reminded him so much of Denise it physically hurt. Are you sad today, Daddy? A little, he admitted, because Denise had made him promise. No lying to their daughter. Not about feelings. Not about the things that matter. That's okay, Zoe said, patting his cheek with her small hand. Mommy said brave people are allowed to be sad. Marcus drove Zoe to school in his 12-year-old Chevy truck with a check engine light that had been on so long he'd named it. The truck burned oil, and the heater only worked on one side, but it was paid off. In Marcus's world, paid off was the only luxury that mattered. Rain started halfway there. Not heavy, just enough to make the roads slick and the wipers squeak against the windshield. Daddy, can Tanya come over this weekend? Aunt Tanya, baby. And yes, she's coming Saturday. Can she do my hair? It's getting crazy. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I can do your hair. Zoe gave him a look that was pure Denise, loving but honest. Daddy, you're good at lots of things. Hair isn't one of them. He laughed. It felt good. Laughing always felt a little guilty these days, like he was stealing something that didn't belong to him anymore. At the school drop-off, Zoe grabbed her rainbow backpack and leaned over the seat. Love you to the sky, Daddy. And past the stars, baby girl. She opened the door, then stopped, turned back. Daddy, come home safe today, okay? Something about the way she said it. Not casual, not routine, but with weight. Like she'd been carrying the fear of losing him the same way he carried the memory of losing Denise. I always come home, he said. That's my job. She smiled, hopped out, and skipped toward the entrance without looking back. Rainbow backpack bouncing, braids flying. Marcus watched her until she disappeared through the doors. Then he pulled out of the lot and turned on the Interstate 70, heading toward another 8-hour shift of being invisible. He was doing 65 in the right lane when it happened. The white Audi, 2 cars ahead, swerved hard left. Marcus's foot came off the gas instinctively. A stalled delivery truck sat half in the lane with no hazard lights, and the Audi driver had seen it too late. The Audi clipped the truck's bumper at highway speed. The car went sideways. Marcus watched the tires lose grip on the wet asphalt. That horrible moment when physics took over and the driver became a passenger. The car hit the guardrail and flipped. Once. Twice. It came to rest upright, but wrong. Crumpled. Twisted. Steam and smoke rising from the hood. Marcus's truck skidded to a stop on the shoulder. His hands were shaking. He grabbed his phone. 911, what's your emergency? There's been an accident. Interstate 70 eastbound, maybe 3 miles past the Langford Corps exit. Car hit a stalled truck, flipped twice. I can see someone inside. Sir, are you injured? No, but the car... He stopped. Smoke was thickening under the Audi's crumpled hood. Not steam anymore. Smoke. Dark and chemical and wrong. There's smoke coming from the engine. A lot of it. Sir, please stay at a safe distance. Emergency services are en route. Do not approach the vehicle. How long? Estimated arrival 8 to 10 minutes. Marcus stared at the smoke. Orange flickered beneath the hood. Not flickered. Grew. She doesn't have 8 minutes. He ended the call. For 5 seconds, the longest 5 seconds of his life, Marcus sat in his truck and didn't move. His hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went gray. Zoe. That's all he could think. Her face, her voice. Come home safe today, Daddy. If he got out of this truck and walked toward that fire and something went wrong, Zoe Williams would be an orphan. 7 years old, with no mother and no father, and nothing but a stuffed elephant named Gerald, and a note in her lunchbox from a dead man. You are brave. You are smart. You are loved. Marcus looked at the burning car. Through the shattered windshield, he could see a figure slumped against the seatbelt, not moving. But there, barely, the figure's chest rose and fell. She was alive. God forgive me, Marcus whispered. He got out of the truck. The heat hit him at 15 feet. At 10 feet, he could hear the fire, not crackling like a campfire, but roaring, breathing, like something alive and hungry. He ran to the driver's door and pulled. Jammed. Crushed inward so badly, the handle didn't even move. Ma'am! He banged on the window. Can you hear me? Nothing. She was young, mid-20s maybe. Blood ran from a gash on her forehead. Her left arm hung at an angle that made Marcus's stomach flip. She was unconscious, and the smoke was filling the cabin. Marcus ran back to his truck, grabbed the tire iron from behind the seat. He smashed the rear passenger window. Glass exploded inward. The sound was swallowed by the growing roar of fire under the hood. He climbed through. The interior was an oven. Smoke burned his eyes, his throat, his lungs. He couldn't see clearly. Everything was gray and orange and hot. He felt his way to the front seat, found the woman's seatbelt, pulled the release. Jammed. The metal clasp was twisted from the impact, bent into itself. Come on, Marcus said through gritted teeth. He pulled out his pocket knife, the one Denise had given him for their last anniversary. Small, sharp, with his initials engraved on the handle. He'd carried it every day since she died. He started cutting the seatbelt strap. The nylon was thick, military grade. His knife caught, slipped, caught again. His hands were slick with sweat and something else. Blood. His blood, from the glass he'd crawled through. The flames broke through the dashboard vents, orange tongues reaching toward him. No, 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 come on! His left sleeve caught fire. He beat it out against the seat, feeling the heat sear through to his skin. He didn't stop cutting. The woman made a sound, a moan, barely there. I got you, Marcus said, sawing faster. Stay with me, I got you. The belt gave way. Her full weight collapsed against him. She was limp, dead weight, terrifying weight. He hooked his arms under hers and pulled her toward the back seat. Getting her through the rear window was impossible. He did it anyway. His back scraped across the jagged glass still lining the frame. He felt the glass cut through his shirt, through his skin, into muscle. He didn't care. He couldn't care. He fell backward out of the car with a woman on top of him, rolled, got up, grabbed her under the arms and dragged her across the asphalt. 5 feet. 10 feet. Not enough. He heard it. A low sound, deep, like the earth inhaling. He knew what it meant because he'd worked around machinery and fuel systems for 15 years. Oh, God! Marcus threw himself on top of the woman, covering her body with his, and the world exploded. The gas tank went up with a force that lifted them both off the ground. Marcus felt it in his spine, his ribs, his teeth. Debris rained down, metal, glass, pieces of a car that had been a car 30 seconds ago. Something hot embedded in his shoulder. Something sharp sliced across his back. Then silence. Not real silence. His ears were ringing so badly that everything else was muted, distant, like hearing the world through water. Marcus was lying on wet grass. He didn't remember getting to the grass. The woman was beneath him, still unconscious, still breathing. He rolled off her, and his body screamed. Every nerve, every muscle, every inch of burned and cut and battered skin. He pressed his jacket against the wound on her head. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it in place. "You're okay," he said, though his voice came out as a croak, barely audible over the ringing in his ears. "Help's coming. Just hold on." He could feel blood running down his back. His left hand was swelling, the skin tight and hot from the burn. 3 of his fingers wouldn't close properly. He didn't move. He kept pressure on her wound, and he talked to her. "You're going to be all right. The ambulance is coming. Can you hear me? You're safe now. You're safe." And then, so quiet he almost missed it, her lips moved. "Thank you." 2 words, barely a whisper. Her eyes didn't open. She might not have even been conscious. But she said it. Marcus felt tears running down his face. He didn't know when they'd started. "You're welcome," he whispered back. "You're welcome." The paramedics found him hunched over her, still talking, still holding his jacket against her wound. His hands were a ruin of burns and cuts. Blood had soaked through his shirt and pooled on the ground beneath him. "Sir, we need you to step back." "Take care of her first," Marcus said. "She was trapped longer." "Sir, you're bleeding badly. Please, her first." His voice left no room for argument. They worked on the woman, stabilized her neck, started an IV, called out terms: skull fracture, broken humerus, possible internal bleeding, each one landing in Marcus's chest like a fist. "She's stable," the lead paramedic finally said. "We're transporting now." Only then did Marcus let them touch him. A female paramedic, calm eyes, steady hands, knelt beside him and started cutting away his shirt. She went quiet when she saw his back. "What's your name?" she asked, and Marcus could tell by her voice that what she'd seen was bad. "Marcus Williams." "Marcus, you saved that woman's life. But these burns, you need surgery. Can you tell me if you have family we should contact?" "My sister, Tanya Williams, and—" his voice cracked. "My daughter's school, Zoe Williams. She's 7. I was supposed to pick her up at 3:15. The paramedic's hand rested briefly on his arm, gentle above the burns. "We'll make sure someone's there for her." They loaded him into the second ambulance. As the doors closed, Marcus caught one last glimpse of the wreckage. The white Audi, reduced to a skeleton of charred metal, flames still twisting in the rain. He closed his eyes. "Come home safe today, Daddy." "I'm trying, baby girl," he whispered. "I'm trying." Denver General, emergency room. The fluorescent lights were too bright, and everything smelled like antiseptic and fear. Marcus lay on his stomach while Dr. Coleman worked on his back, removing glass, cleaning burns, making sounds that doctors aren't supposed to make. "You know," Dr. Coleman said, "in 20 years of emergency medicine, I've seen a lot of stupid, brave things. This ranks up there." "That bad?" "You've got second-degree burns across 40% of your upper back. Lacerations on both arms, both hands. 3 fingers on your left hand have significant nerve damage. You're looking at surgery and 6 to 8 weeks of physical therapy. And you've got a piece of automotive glass embedded in your right shoulder that I'm about to remove. So brace yourself." Marcus gripped the edge of the table, didn't make a sound. "The woman," he said when it was over. "The one from the accident." "Is she here?" "Elena Langford. She's in surgery now. Skull fracture, broken arm, internal bleeding they're repairing. But she's alive, Marcus, because of you." Langford? The name tugged at something in his brain, but the pain medication was making everything foggy and far away. "You know her?" "No, I don't know. The name sounds familiar." "Get some rest. You've done enough for one day." But Marcus couldn't rest. He lay there staring at the ceiling, running the last 2 hours through his mind on a loop. The flip, the fire, the choice, the explosion. He kept coming back to the same moment, sitting in his truck, hands on the wheel, knowing that if he opened that door, he might never open another door again. Knowing Zoe was counting on him. Knowing Denise would never forgive him if their daughter ended up alone. He'd open the door anyway. Was that courage? Or was it something else? Some broken part of him that didn't value his own life enough to walk away? He didn't know. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. The door opened. Footsteps. Then a voice that hit him harder than the explosion had. "Daddy!" Tanya was behind her, face tight with worry. But Zoe was faster. She ran to the bed and then stopped short, eyes wide, taking in the bandages, the IV, the burns visible on his arms. "Daddy, what happened to you?" Marcus turned onto his side, slowly, painfully. He looked at his daughter, all braids and big brown eyes and barely contained terror, and something inside him broke wide open. "Come here, baby girl." She climbed onto the bed with the careful precision of a child who knows the person she loves is hurt. She curled against his chest, avoiding his arms, tucking herself into the one space that wasn't burned or bandaged. "I helped someone who got hurt in a car accident," Marcus said, "and I got a little banged up doing it." "A little?" Tanya's voice was sharp. She'd been crying. Marcus could see the tracks on her cheeks. "Marcus, the doctor said you crawled into a burning car. A burning car. With Zoe at home waiting for you." "Tanya, no. What were you thinking? What if you died in there? What was I supposed to tell Zoe? Sorry, baby, your daddy decided to be a hero and now you got nobody?" The words hit like stones. Because she was right. She was absolutely right. "And Tanya," Zoe's small voice cut through the argument, "Daddy helped someone." "Baby, I know, but Mommy said brave people help, even when it's scary." Zoe looked up at Marcus. "Were you scared, Daddy?" "More scared than I've ever been in my life." "More scared than when Mommy got sick?" The room went still. Marcus swallowed hard. "Different scared. When Mommy got sick, I was scared because I couldn't do anything. Today I was scared because I could." Zoe thought about that for a long time. Then she said, "I'm glad you helped her, Daddy." Tanya sat down in the chair beside the bed and put her face in her hands. Marcus reached out, slowly, painfully, and touched her shoulder. "I'm sorry, T. I know what I put you through today. I know what I almost put Zoe through." Tanya looked up. "Don't you ever do that to me again. You hear me? That girl needs you alive, Marcus. Not on a plaque. Alive." "I hear you." "Do you? Because when they called me and said you were in the ER with burns, my heart stopped. I thought I was going to have to raise your child. I love Zoe more than anything, but she's not mine to raise. She's yours. And you almost took yourself out of her life for a stranger." "She wasn't a stranger," Marcus said quietly. "Not once I saw her breathing. Once I saw that, she was a person. A person who was going to die if I didn't do something." Tanya stared at him. Then she leaned forward and kissed his forehead, something she hadn't done since they were kids. "Denise would have killed you," she said. "And then she would have been proud of you. In that order." Marcus almost smiled. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Later, after Tanya took Zoe to the cafeteria for dinner, Marcus lay alone in the dim hospital room. His hands throbbed beneath the bandages. His back burned. The pain medication was wearing thin. He reached for his phone on the bedside table. It took him 3 tries to grip it. His fingers wouldn't cooperate. He scrolled to his photos and found the one he was looking for, Denise. Summer. 2 years and 4 months ago. She was standing in their tiny backyard, Zoe on her hip, laughing at something Marcus had said. The sun was behind her, making her look like she was glowing. She was already sick in that photo. They just didn't know it yet. "I know what you'd say," Marcus whispered to the screen. "You'd say I did right. You'd say love means showing up for people, even when it costs everything." He paused. "But it almost cost me everything today, baby. It almost cost me Zoe." The phone blurred. He wiped his eyes with the back of his bandaged hand. "I don't know if I was brave or stupid, maybe both. But she's alive. That woman is alive because I opened the door. And I have to believe that counts for something." He set the phone down, closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd have to think about surgery, about bills, about how to pay for 6 weeks of recovery on a maintenance man's salary with no savings and no disability insurance worth a damn. About calling Roger at Langford Corp and explaining why he wouldn't be at work. About whether his job would even be there when he got back. But tonight, he let himself feel one thing only. Zoe was asleep in the cafeteria with Tanya, safe and whole and loved. The woman from the car, Elena Langford, whoever she was alive in a room somewhere in this hospital. And Marcus Williams, son of a janitor, maintenance worker, single father, invisible man, had crawled into a fire and pulled a stranger out of death's hands. Nobody would write about it in the paper. Nobody would put his name on a building. Nobody in the executive suites of Langford Corp would ever know that the man who fixed their pipes had done something worth more than everything in their stock portfolios combined. But Marcus knew, and somehow, lying in that hospital bed, with his body broken and his heart full, that was enough. That was enough. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Marcus was awake for the first 2 because the anesthesiologist wanted to monitor his nerve responses. He lay on his stomach with a curtain blocking his view of his own left hand, while Dr. Coleman worked on 3 fingers that couldn't feel anything below the second knuckle. "I'm going to need you to tell me when you feel pressure," Dr. Coleman said. "Okay." A pause. Then, "Do you feel that?" "No." Another pause. "That?" "No." "How about now?" Marcus waited. Nothing. "No." Dr. Coleman didn't say anything for a long time after that. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. The casual confidence replaced by something more careful. "Marcus, I want to be straight with you. The nerve damage in your index and middle finger is more extensive than the imaging showed. I can repair some of it, but you're likely going to have reduced sensation permanently. Maybe 60–70% function. Can I grip things? Tools, wrenches, that kind of stuff?" "With physical therapy, yes. Eventually. But it's going to take time and it's going to hurt." "How much time?" 8 weeks minimum, probably 12. 12 weeks. 3 months without full use of his hands. 3 months without work. Marcus closed his eyes and did the math he'd been avoiding since the ambulance brought him in. Rent was $1,400. Utilities, $350. Zoe's after-school program, $200. Groceries, $400 if he was careful. Insurance through Langford Corp would cover part of the hospital stay, but the deductible alone was $5,000. And that was before the surgery, before the physical therapy, before the prescriptions. "Marcus?" Dr. Coleman's voice pulled him back. "You still with me?" "Yeah, I'm here. We're going to put you under now for the rest. When you wake up, the hard part will be over." Marcus almost laughed. The hard part. The doctor thought the hard part was the surgery. The hard part was going to be everything that came after. He woke up in recovery with Tanya sitting beside him, her phone in her hand, scrolling through something with a focused intensity that meant she was worried and trying not to show it. "What time is it?" His voice came out thick, drugged. "Almost midnight. Zoe's at my place. She's asleep." "She okay?" "She made me promise to call her the second you woke up." "I told her the second you woke up would be the middle of the night, and she said she didn't care." Tanya put her phone down. "She drew you a picture. It's in your bag. You and her flying through space. She said you're a superhero who doesn't need a cape." Marcus's throat tightened. "T, I need to talk to you about something." "If it's about money, I already know." "How?" "Because I know you, Marcus. I know what you make. I know what your insurance covers. And I know you've got maybe 2,000 in savings because that's what you told me last month when the water heater broke." Tanya leaned forward. "I've got some set aside. Not a lot, but enough to cover your rent for 2 months." "I'm not taking your money." "You're not taking it. I'm giving it. There's a difference." "Tanya." "Marcus?" Her voice was firm. The big sister voice. The voice that had gotten them both through a childhood with a father who worked 2 jobs and a mother who left when Marcus was 6. "You pulled a woman out of a burning car. You almost died. Your hands are wrapped in more gauze than a mummy. This is not the time for pride." "It's not pride. You've got your own bills. You've got the shop." Tanya ran a small hair salon in Aurora. Business was steady, but not booming. Marcus knew she couldn't afford to carry his weight without hurting herself. "Let me worry about the shop," she said. "You worry about getting better and getting back to Zoe. And my job?" Tanya hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus everything. "You called Roger," he said. "I called Roger." "And?" "He said the company gives 2 weeks paid medical leave. After that, it's unpaid. And after 6 weeks unpaid, they have the right to fill your position." 6 weeks. Marcus stared at the ceiling. He'd given Langford Corp 5 years. 5 years of showing up early, staying late, never complaining, never calling in sick. He'd fixed their pipes, their boilers, their HVAC systems. He'd worked holidays so men with families bigger and louder than his could stay home. He'd cleaned up floods in the basement at 2 in the morning and never asked for overtime because Roger said the budget was tight. 5 years. And they'd give him 6 weeks before replacing him. "Roger said he'd try to hold it longer," Tanya added. "He likes you, but it's not his call." "Whose call is it?" "HR. And above HR, the executives." The executives. The people on the top floor Marcus had never met. The people who walked on marble while he crawled through basements. The people whose names were on the building, whose cars cost more than his apartment, whose daughters drove white Audis on rainy highways. A thought flickered. Langford. Elena Langford. The woman he'd saved. T. The woman from the accident. Did anyone say her last name? "The doctor mentioned it. Langford, I think. Why?" "Langford. Like Langford Corp. Like where I work." Tanya frowned. "That's got to be a coincidence." "Yeah," Marcus said. "Probably." But something sat heavy in his chest. Not hope. He'd learned not to carry hope like that, not since Denise. Just a strange, uneasy awareness that the universe had placed him in an impossible situation, and now he was supposed to figure out what it meant. He didn't figure it out that night. He fell asleep with the question still turning in his mind and dreamed about fire. The first week home was the worst. Marcus couldn't dress himself, couldn't button a shirt, couldn't tie his shoes, couldn't grip a fork without pain shooting up his arm. Tanya came every morning at 6 to help him get ready and get Zoe to school, then went to the salon, then came back at night to help with dinner and bedtime. Marcus hated every second of it. Not because of Tanya. She was the strongest person he knew, and her presence was a lifeline. He hated it because he could see what it was costing her. She was exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, snapping at small things, falling asleep on his couch before 9. "You need to stop coming every day," he told her on day 5. "I can manage. You burned 2 pieces of toast this morning and dropped a glass of orange juice because you can't grip with your left hand. You're not managing." "I'll figure it out." Marcus Anthony Williams, if you say, "I'll figure it out," one more time, I'm going to tape your mouth shut with surgical gauze. Zoe thought the whole thing was an adventure. She appointed herself Daddy's helper and took the role with deadly seriousness. She squeezed the toothpaste. She tied his shoes, slowly, with concentration, tongue sticking out of the corner of her mouth. She carried his coffee to the table every morning with both hands, walking like she was transporting nuclear material. "Daddy, I'm going to take care of you until your hands work again," she announced on the 3rd morning. "That's my job now." "What about school?" "School is my other job. I have 2 jobs now, like you used to." Something about the way she said "used to" made Marcus's stomach drop. Because Zoe was 7, and 7-year-olds are the most observant people on the planet, even when adults think they aren't paying attention. She knew he wasn't going to work. She knew money was different now. She knew because she'd heard him on the phone with the insurance company, his voice tight and controlled, while they explained what was covered and what wasn't, which was most of it. "Zoe, can I tell you something?" "Yes?" "Things are going to be a little tight for a while. That means we might not be able to do some of the fun stuff we usually do. No movies for a bit. No eating out. But we're going to be okay. I promise you, we're going to be okay." Zoe looked at him with those enormous brown eyes. "I don't care about movies, Daddy. I care about you being home." The bills came like artillery fire. First, the hospital. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket for the ER visit, surgery, and overnight stay came to $8,200. Marcus read the number 3 times. Then he put the paper face down on the table and didn't look at it again for 2 days. Then the ambulance. $1,400. Apparently, being rescued was expensive. Then the prescriptions. Pain medication, antibiotics, burn cream. $340 a month with insurance. Then the physical therapy evaluation. His insurance covered 20 sessions. Dr. Coleman said he'd need at least 40. 20 sessions out of pocket at $150 each. Another $3,000. Marcus sat at his kitchen table one night after Zoe was asleep and wrote every number on a piece of paper. Total debt from the accident, $14,940. Savings, $1,800. Monthly income during leave, 0. Tanya's contribution? Enough for 2 months' rent, which he hadn't accepted yet, and wouldn't unless he had no other choice. He stared at the numbers until they blurred. Denise had always handled the money. She'd been good at it, stretching a dollar, finding deals, making sure there was always a little something set aside. After she died, Marcus had tried to keep up her system, but grief made him sloppy. He'd missed payments, racked up late fees, let things slide because some mornings just getting out of bed felt like enough. Now he was paying for it. Or rather, he couldn't pay for it. He pulled out his phone and Googled "Financial Assistance for Medical Bills, Denver." The results were overwhelming. Forms, qualifications, waiting lists, hotlines that were only open during hours he used to be at work. He started filling out an application for a hospital payment plan and got halfway through before his hand cramped so badly he dropped the phone. He sat in the dark kitchen and listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Zoe breathing in her sleep. "What do I do, Denise?" he whispered. "What would you do?" She didn't answer. She never answered. But sometimes the silence itself felt like an answer. Not words, just a feeling. Keep going. Don't stop. Zoe needs you standing. On the first day of week 3, Marcus went back to work. Dr. Coleman told him it was too soon. Tanya told him he was being an idiot. His physical therapist said if he re-injured his hands, the nerve damage could become permanent. Marcus heard all of it. Then he put on his gray uniform with Langsford Corps on the chest, drove his Chevy truck to the building with the check engine light still burning, and clocked in at 7 a.m. like the last 3 weeks hadn't happened. Roger met him at the maintenance shop in the basement. Good man, Roger. 55, beer gut, Vietnam vet son who understood duty the way some people understand breathing. Mike, you sure about this? You look like hell. I feel like hell. But my leave is up, and I can't afford to lose this job. Roger looked at his bandaged hands. You can't grip a wrench like that. I can hold a clipboard. I can supervise. I can do inspections, inventory, scheduling. Put me on desk work until my hands are right. Roger rubbed the back of his neck. I'd have to clear that with HR. They're not exactly flexible up there. Then clear it. Please, Roger. I've been here 5 years. I've never asked for a favor. Something shifted in Roger's face. Yeah, all right. Let me make some calls. But Marcus, take it easy. You've got nothing to prove to anyone in this building. Marcus wanted to believe that. But as he walked through the building that morning, he realized something had changed. People were looking at him. Not the usual looking through him that he'd grown accustomed to over 5 years. Actually looking. Someone in accounting stopped him in the hallway. Are you Marcus Williams? The guy who pulled that woman out of the car? Marcus blinked. How did you... It was on the news. Channel 7 ran a story last week. You didn't know? He didn't know. He hadn't watched the news in weeks. He'd been too busy trying to figure out how to feed his daughter on 0 income. They called you a hero, the accounting guy said. They showed the car. What was left of it anyway? Man, there was nothing left. Marcus nodded and kept walking. He didn't feel like a hero. Heroes didn't have $14,940 in medical debt. Heroes didn't eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner 3 nights in a row because they were too proud to take their sister's money. Heroes didn't lie awake at night wondering if the choice they'd made was courage or selfishness dressed up as courage. He spent the morning doing inventory in the supply room, a task that required a clipboard, a pen, and functioning eyes, none of which were damaged. His left hand ached from gripping the pen, but he didn't stop. At lunch, he sat alone in the maintenance break room, eating a sandwich Zoe had helped him make that morning. Turkey, no crust, apple slices. She'd packed it in his old lunchbox and put a note inside. You are brave. You are smart. You are loved. Zoe. She'd copied the note from his napkin tradition. Same words, same format. His daughter had taken the thing he did for her and turned it around, giving it back to him when he needed it most. Marcus held that note for a long time, longer than a grown man should hold a piece of paper in a break room that smelled like old coffee and engine grease. The afternoon was quiet. Marcus filed work orders, updated the maintenance log, and tried not to think about money. At 3 o'clock, he was reviewing the heating system schedule for the executive wing when Roger appeared in the doorway of the maintenance office. Mike? Something was wrong. Roger's face had that look. The look people get when they're about to deliver news they don't want to deliver. HR? Marcus asked. No, not HR. Roger paused. Mr. Langford wants to see you. Marcus's hand stopped moving on the clipboard. Mr. Langford, Richard Langford. That's the one. His office, top floor, now." The air left the room. Marcus set down the clipboard and looked at Roger, searching for some clue. Good news, bad news, anything. "Roger, is this about the time I missed?" "I don't know, Mike. Diane called down and said he wanted to see you personally. That's all I know." "Has he ever called a maintenance worker to his office before?" Roger met his eyes. "In 22 years working here? No. Never." Marcus stood up. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his burned hands. He looked down at his uniform. Gray shirt, gray pants, work boots, bandaged fingers. He was about to walk into the office of one of the most powerful men in Denver, looking like exactly what he was. A broken man in a janitor's uniform. "Mike." Roger's voice stopped him at the door. "Whatever this is, you've got nothing to be ashamed of. You hear me? Not one damn thing." Marcus nodded, walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the top floor. The doors closed, and Marcus Williams began the longest ride of his life. The elevator opened, and Marcus stepped out onto a floor he'd never stood on in 5 years of working in this building. His work boots were silent on the polished floor. Everything up here was quiet. Not the quiet of emptiness, but the quiet of money. The kind of quiet that costs something. Marcus felt it immediately. The way you feel a temperature change when you walk from outside into an air-conditioned room. He didn't belong here. Every cell in his body knew it. A woman at a desk near the corner office looked up as he approached. She was maybe 60, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her nameplate said, "Diane." "Mr. Williams?" "Yes, ma'am." She smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. Warm. The kind of smile people give you when they know something you don't. "He's expecting you. Please go right in." Marcus reached for the door handle and stopped. His bandaged hand hovered over the brass knob. His heart was doing something dangerous in his chest. Not beating so much as throwing itself against his ribs. He'd prepared himself for 2 possibilities on the elevator ride up. 1. Richard Langford wanted to thank him for saving a woman who shared his last name. A handshake, a gift card, maybe a letter for his file. 2. Richard Langford wanted to discuss the 3 weeks of missed work and the reduced capacity Marcus was operating at, and this meeting was the polite version of being let go. He'd prepared himself for both. He was not prepared for what he found on the other side of that door. She was sitting near the desk in a wheelchair. Her arm was in a cast, a blue one, the color Zoe would have picked. Bandages still covered part of her forehead, where Marcus remembered seeing blood that morning on the highway, though the blood was gone now, and color had returned to her face. She looked different, conscious. Younger, maybe, or older. It was hard to tell because her eyes were locked on Marcus, and they were filled with something so big, so heavy, that Marcus felt it hit him like a physical force. She was crying. Not the polite kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, somewhere you can't control. A man stood by the window with his back to the room. Tall, silver hair. The posture of someone who was used to being the most important person in every room he entered. He turned when the door opened, and Marcus saw his face. Richard Langford. Marcus had seen his picture in the lobby every day for 5 years. The official portrait near the elevators. Confident, commanding, untouchable. The man standing in front of him now looked nothing like that portrait. His eyes were red, his jaw was tight. His hands, clasped in front of him, were trembling. "Mr. Williams." Richard Langford's voice was controlled, but barely. The way a man's voice sounds when he spent days holding himself together and the seams are finally giving way. "Thank you for coming up." "Yes, sir." "Please, sit down." Marcus didn't sit. He couldn't. His eyes kept moving between Richard Langford and the woman in the wheelchair. The woman he'd pulled from the fire. Elena Langford. The connection he'd been turning over in his mind for 3 weeks. The coincidence he'd told Tanya was probably nothing, was suddenly very much something. "Mr. Williams," Richard said, "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Olivia. Elena is her middle name. She uses it with friends. But her name is Olivia Langford. She's my only child." The room tilted. Marcus felt it physically, like the floor had shifted beneath his boots. His ears rang, not from an explosion this time, but from the sheer weight of understanding crashing down on him. His CEO's daughter. The woman he'd crawled into a burning car to save. The stranger he'd shielded from an explosion with his own body. The reason he had $14,940 in medical debt and nerve damage in 3 fingers and scars he'd carry for the rest of his life was his CEO's daughter. Marcus started, but nothing followed. What do you say? What words exist for a moment like this? Olivia answered for him. She gripped the arms of her wheelchair and pushed herself up. Her legs wobbled. Richard moved toward her, but she held up her good hand. "Dad, I can do this." She crossed the room slowly, unsteadily, each step clearly costing her something. Marcus stood frozen, watching this woman he'd last seen unconscious and bleeding walk toward him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. She reached him and put her good arm around his neck and held on like she was drowning. "You saved my life." Her voice broke against his shoulder. Her body shook with sobs she couldn't contain. "The doctors told me. 30 seconds. I had 30 seconds before the fire reached the cabin. They said a man pulled me out through the rear window and covered me when the tank exploded. They said he wouldn't let the paramedics touch him until I was in the ambulance." Marcus's arms came up slowly, carefully, one bandaged hand resting on her back. He could feel her ribs through her shirt. She'd lost weight since the accident. "I just did what anyone would have done," he said. She pulled back and looked at him. Her face was wet, her eyes fierce. "No, you didn't. Don't say that. The police report said 4 cars stopped after the accident. 4 cars. You know how many people got out?" She held up one finger. "1. You. Everyone else stayed in their cars and called 911 and waited. You were the only one who got out. You were the only one who ran toward the fire." "Olivia." Richard's voice was rough. He came closer, and Marcus could see now that the older man wasn't just emotional. He was wrecked. Whatever composure Richard Langford wore in boardrooms and shareholder meetings had been stripped away entirely. This was a father. Just a father. "Olivia, let him breathe." She stepped back, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Sorry. I'm sorry. I've been waiting 3 weeks to say that and I couldn't." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," Marcus said. "Please, don't apologize." Richard put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus felt the weight of it, the slight tremor. "Mr. Williams, Marcus, I need you to hear what I'm about to say." "Yes, sir." "I lost my wife, Margaret, 12 years ago. Cancer. She fought it for 3 years, and I watched it take her apart, piece by piece. When she died, I made a promise to myself that I would protect Olivia with everything I had. Every resource, every connection, every dollar. I built this company into what it is, partly because I believed that if I made it big enough, strong enough, I could keep her safe." Richard paused. His hand was still on Marcus's shoulder. 3 weeks ago, a deer ran onto a highway, and none of that mattered. Not the money, not the company, not the security team or the insurance or the armored car I wanted her to drive that she told me was ridiculous. None of it could save her. A man in a maintenance uniform with a pocket knife saved her. Marcus felt the words land in his chest. Mr. Langford, I've spent the last 3 weeks learning about you. I know that's invasive, and I apologize for it, but I needed to understand who you are. I know about your wife Denise. I know about the lupus. I know about Zoe. I know you've worked in my building for 5 years without a single disciplinary action, without a single complaint, without ever asking for anything above what you were owed. Richard's voice hardened, but not with anger, with something closer to shame. I also know that you've walked through this building for 5 years, and no one on this floor has ever known your name. And that is a failure I take personally. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. It was true. All of it was true. But hearing it spoken out loud by the man whose name was on the building made it feel different. Not better, not worse, just real in a way it hadn't been before. I didn't save your daughter for recognition, Marcus said carefully. I didn't know who she was. I saw a person trapped in a car that was on fire, and I couldn't drive past that. I know, Richard said. That's exactly why I need to talk to you. Because you didn't do it for anything. You did it because it was right. And the cost of doing right has fallen entirely on you, and that is not acceptable to me. He walked to his desk and picked up a folder. Marcus, I've paid your medical bills. All of them. The hospital, the surgery, the ambulance, the prescriptions, the physical therapy, current and future. That is done. It's not negotiable, and I don't want to hear an argument about it. Marcus opened his mouth. Richard held up his hand. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say you can't accept it, that it's too much, that you don't want charity. Richard looked at him with eyes that held no pity, only conviction. This is not charity. This is a debt. You gave my daughter her life. The least I can do is make sure saving her doesn't destroy yours. Marcus's jaw clenched. He felt something building behind his eyes. Pressure, heat, the warning signs of tears he'd been holding since the moment he crawled into that car. He breathed through it, held it together. Barely. There's more, Richard said. I'm promoting you to facilities director. It comes with a salary of $92,000 a year, full executive benefits, health coverage for you and Zoe with no deductible, and an education fund that will cover Zoe's schooling through college. Marcus's knees went soft. He reached for the back of the nearest chair to steady himself. 92,000. He'd been making 38. He'd been clipping coupons and eating peanut butter for dinner and lying awake calculating which bills he could delay. And this man was standing here offering him $92,000 a year. Mr. Langford, that's... I can't. You can. And you will. Because I've watched the security footage of every shift you've worked for the past 5 years, Marcus. Every early morning, every late night, every holiday. I've read your performance reviews. I've talked to Roger and to every person in this building who's worked with you. You're not being promoted because you saved my daughter. You're being promoted because you should have been promoted years ago and no one was paying attention. That broke something in Marcus. Not the money, not the title, the acknowledgement, the simple, devastating truth that he'd been good enough all along and nobody had noticed. He looked down at his bandaged hands, the hands that fixed pipes and boilers and heating units, the hands that packed his daughter's lunch and wrote notes on napkins, the hands that had gripped a stranger's body and dragged her through fire. I don't know what to say, he said, and his voice came out rough and cracked. Nobody's ever... You don't have to say anything, Olivia said softly. She'd been watching from her wheelchair, tears still streaming, but her eyes steady. But I have something to ask you. And it's not from my dad. It's from me. Marcus looked at her. Before the accident, I was driving to a children's shelter. I go every week. I read to kids, bring art supplies, spend time with children who've lost parents. She paused. I'm getting my master's in child psychology. I've spent my whole life studying grief in children because I lost my mother when I was 14 and nobody knew how to help me. My dad gave me everything money could buy, but what I needed was someone who understood. She wheeled herself closer to Marcus. The doctors told me about Zoe, about Denise, about how you've been raising her alone since your wife died. They told me Zoe was at the hospital every day, that she drew pictures of you as a superhero, that she told the nurses her daddy was the bravest person in the world. Marcus's throat closed completely. He couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. I would like to meet Zoe, Olivia said. Not because I feel obligated, not because my father asked me to, because I want to know the child who was raised by a man brave enough to leave her behind to save a stranger. I want to understand what kind of love builds that kind of courage. And honestly, she wiped her eyes again, I think maybe Zoe and I might understand each other, because we both know what it's like to lose a mother and be terrified of losing the person who's left. Marcus stood in the middle of that office, surrounded by more wealth than he'd seen in 10 lifetimes, with his hands bandaged and his back scarred, and his maintenance uniform still carrying the faint smell of the basement where he'd spent 5 invisible years. And he cried. Not the quiet kind, not the controlled kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep you didn't even know it existed until something breaks it open. He cried for Denise, who should have been here to see this. He cried for Zoe, who'd been tying his shoes and squeezing his toothpaste and packing his lunch like a tiny soldier holding the line. He cried for himself, for the man who'd sat at his kitchen table staring at bills he couldn't pay, whispering to a dead wife in the dark, wondering if the choice he'd made on that highway was courage or the worst kind of selfishness. He cried because for the first time since Denise died, someone was telling him he mattered. Not because of what he could fix or carry or endure, but because of who he was. Richard Langford, CEO of a billion-dollar company, stood next to Marcus Williams, maintenance worker, and didn't say a word. He just waited. He understood something about grief and gratitude colliding. He'd lived through it himself. When Marcus finally got his breathing under control, he wiped his face with his sleeve and looked at Olivia. She'd love that, he said. Zoe. She'd really love that. He stopped, started over. After Denise died, Zoe stopped talking for 2 months. Not a word. Not to me, not to Tanya, not to her teachers. I took her to 3 different therapists, and she just sat there, holding Gerald. Gerald? Her stuffed elephant. Denise gave it to her. Marcus almost smiled through the tears. One night, I was sitting on her bed, and I just started talking. Not asking questions, not trying to fix anything. Just talking. Telling her about her mom. Funny stories, stupid stuff. How Denise burned pancakes every single Saturday, but kept making them because she said practice was the point. How she used to sing off-key in the shower and pretend she sounded good. How she cried at every movie, even the happy ones. He paused. And then Zoe said her first words in 2 months. She said, "Mommy said angels don't have wings. They just have brave hearts." And she started talking again after that. Like the words had been stuck, and that one sentence was the thing that broke them loose. Olivia was crying again. Richard was looking out the window, but Marcus could see his reflection in the glass, and the old man's face was shattered. "She sounds extraordinary," Olivia whispered. "She's the reason I get up in the morning," Marcus said. "She's the reason I went into that car. Not because I'm brave, because she made me brave. Because Denise made me the kind of man who couldn't drive past someone dying. And because Zoe made me the kind of father who had to come back alive." Richard turned from the window. "You came back. That's what matters." "I almost didn't," Marcus met his eyes. I need you to know that. I sat in my truck and I almost drove away. I thought about Zoe being an orphan, and I almost chose safe. I was 1 second away from putting my truck in drive and leaving your daughter to burn. The room went still. But you didn't, Richard said. But I didn't. Why? Marcus thought about it. He'd been thinking about it for 3 weeks. In the hospital, in his kitchen, in the dark, in his dreams. Because I saw her hand move. Through the windshield, I saw her fingers twitch. And once I knew she was alive, I couldn't unknow it. Walking away stopped being an option. Not because I'm good, because I'm human. And humans aren't built to watch someone die when they can do something about it. Richard Langford stared at Marcus for a long time. Then he extended his hand. I've shaken hands with governors, senators, Fortune 500 CEOs. I have never in my life been more honored to shake a man's hand than I am right now. Marcus looked down at his own hand, bandaged, swollen, scarred. He took Richard's hand and gripped it as firmly as his damaged fingers would allow. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. I'll be thanking you for the rest of my life. Olivia rolled her wheelchair forward. So, when do I get to meet Zoe? Marcus laughed. It surprised him. The sound came out raw and rusty, like something that hadn't been used properly in years. She's going to have a lot of questions. Fair warning. That kid asks more questions before breakfast than most people ask in a week. Good, Olivia said. I like questions. Questions mean someone's paying attention. Thursday, Marcus said. Come Thursday. I'll cook. Fair warning on that, too. I'm not great at it. Denise was the cook? Olivia guessed. Denise was everything, Marcus said. I'm just the guy trying to keep up. He said goodbye to Richard and Olivia at the office door. Diane smiled at him again on his way out. That same warm, knowing smile. He rode the elevator back down to the basement. Walked past the maintenance shop where Roger was pretending not to wait for him. Well? Roger asked. Marcus stopped, looked at his supervisor. This man who'd been fair to him for 5 years, who'd fought to hold his job, who'd told him he had nothing to be ashamed of. Roger, do you know who I pulled out of that car? I heard a rumor. His daughter. I saved Richard Langford's daughter. Roger leaned back against the workbench and let out a long, slow breath. Well, I'll be damned. He's promoting me, facilities director. Roger's eyes widened. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. Facilities director? That's 3 levels above me. Roger, don't you dare apologize. Don't you dare feel bad about this for 1 second. Roger pointed a finger at him. I've watched you bust your tail in this building for 5 years. I've watched you come in early and stay late and never once complain about the fact that guys with half your work ethic made twice your salary. You deserve this, Mike. Accident or no accident, you deserve this. Marcus nodded. His throat was tight again. Thank you, Roger, for everything. For holding my job. For believing me when I said I could work with busted hands. For all of it. Get out of here, Roger said gruffly, turning away, but not before Marcus saw him wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. Go pick up your kid. Marcus drove to Zoe's school. He was early, 20 minutes early, something that never happened because his shift usually ran long. He sat in the pickup line in his old Chevy with a check engine light burning and his hands wrapped in gauze and tears dried on his face, and he waited. When Zoe came through the doors, she spotted his truck immediately. She ran, rainbow backpack bouncing, braids flying, legs pumping, face split into a grin so wide it could have powered the whole city. She yanked open the passenger door and climbed in. You're early. You're never early. I know. Did something happen? Marcus looked at his daughter, 7 years old, brave enough to tie her broken father's shoes, strong enough to carry grief she never should have had to carry, wise enough to know that angels don't need wings. Yeah, baby girl, he said. Something happened. Good something or bad something? Good something. Really, really good something. Tell me. Tell me, tell me, tell me. How about I tell you over ice cream? Zoe's eyes went wide. We said no extras because of the money stuff. Marcus smiled. For the first time in 3 weeks, maybe for the first time in 2 years, it wasn't a smile that cost him anything. It was free. It was full. The money stuff just got a whole lot better, he said. Now put your seatbelt on. We're celebrating. Zoe buckled up, bouncing in her seat, firing questions faster than Marcus could answer them. He pulled out of the school parking lot and into traffic. And somewhere between the school and the ice cream shop on Colfax, he felt something shift inside his chest. Not a breaking this time. A mending. Small, fragile, barely there, like the first green shoot pushing through concrete. He glanced at the passenger seat, half expecting to see Denise sitting there the way she used to, feet up on the dash, singing along to whatever was on the radio, alive and whole and laughing. She wasn't there. She'd never be there again. But Zoe was. Zoe was right there, talking a mile a minute about her day, and Marcus could hear Denise in every word, every laugh, every question. And that was enough to build a life on. Thursday came faster than Marcus expected. He'd spent the 2 days between Richard Langford's office and Thursday evening in a state he didn't recognize. Not panic, not excitement. Something in between. Like standing on the edge of a diving board, knowing the water below was deep, but not knowing if it was warm or cold. He cleaned the apartment 3 times. The first time was practical. Dishes, laundry, the bathroom Zoe always left toothpaste smeared across the sink. The second time was anxiety, wiping counters that were already clean, straightening cushions that didn't need straightening. The third time Tanya walked in, looked around, and said, Marcus, if you mop that floor one more time, you're going to wear a hole through the linoleum. The place looks small, he said. The place is small. It's always been small. That didn't bother you yesterday. Yesterday I wasn't having dinner with a billionaire's daughter. Tanya took the mop out of his bandaged hands and set it against the wall. Sit down. Listen to me. He sat. That woman is alive because of you. She's not coming here to judge your apartment. She's coming because you dragged her out of a burning car with your bare hands. You think she cares if your couch has a stain on it? There's a stain on the couch? Marcus. Okay, you're right. I know I'm right. Now stop cleaning and start cooking. What are you making? Spaghetti. Can you even hold a pot? Marcus looked at his hands. The bandages were thinner now. Dr. Coleman had reduced them at his last visit. But gripping anything heavy still sent pain shooting up his forearms. I'll figure it out. Tanya gave him the look. The one that meant she'd already decided what was happening, and his opinion was irrelevant. I'll make the sauce. You boil the water. Even you can't mess that up. I love you too, T. Shut up and find a clean tablecloth. Zoe, meanwhile, had been in a state of near hysteria since Marcus told her they were having a guest for dinner. She'd changed clothes 4 times, finally settling on a yellow dress Denise had bought her 6 months before she died. It was getting small. The hem hid above her knees now, but Zoe refused to let it go. Daddy, what's she like? I told you, baby. She's nice. She works with kids. But what's she like? Is she funny? Does she like art? Does she have a dog? I don't know if she has a dog. Can you ask her? I'm not going to text Richard Langford's daughter and ask if she has a dog. Why not? Because... Marcus didn't have a good answer for that. Because you can ask her yourself when she gets here. What if she doesn't like me? Marcus knelt down, ignoring the pull in his back where the burn scars were still tight. He held Zoe's face in his bandaged hands, gently, the way he held everything now, like it might break, like he might break. Zoe, listen to me. There is no version of reality where someone meets you and doesn't like you. You are the best person I know, and I know a lot of people. You don't know that many people, Daddy. Okay, fair. But of the people I know, you're the best one. She smiled. That Denise smile. Can I show her my drawings? You can show her whatever you want. The doorbell rang at 6:15. Zoe froze. Marcus froze. Tanya rolled her eyes and answered the door. Olivia stood in the hallway, no wheelchair this time, but leaning on a cane with her good hand. Her cast was still on her left arm, but someone had drawn flowers on it in colored marker. She held a large paper bag against her hip. Hi, she said. I'm Olivia. I brought art supplies and a book about superheroes. And cookies, because my dad said never show up empty-handed. Tanya stepped aside. Girl, get in here. I'm Tanya. I'm the sister. I made the sauce. And those cookies better be homemade. They're from a bakery on Pearl Street. I can't bake to save my life. Honest, I like her already. Marcus, I like her already. Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel over his shoulder, and for a moment he just watched. Olivia stepped inside, and her eyes moved around the apartment. Not judging, not cataloging, just taking in the space the way you take in someone's home when you want to understand who they are. Her gaze stopped on the photo of Denise on the hallway table. She looked at it for a long time. She was beautiful, Olivia said quietly. Yeah, Marcus said. She was. Then Olivia looked down. Zoe was standing 3 feet away, half hidden behind Marcus's legs, clutching Gerald the elephant with both arms, studying this stranger with the cautious intensity of a child who has learned the hard way that people can leave. Olivia lowered herself carefully, leaning on her cane until she was at Zoe's eye level. You must be Zoe. Zoe nodded, but didn't speak. I like your elephant. Does he have a name? Gerald. Barely a whisper. That's a very serious name for an elephant. He looks like a Gerald. Olivia reached into her paper bag and pulled out a stuffed animal, a small purple octopus with enormous eyes. This is Professor Tentacles. He's not as dignified as Gerald, but he's very friendly. I thought maybe Gerald could use a friend. Zoe's eyes widened. She looked at the octopus, then at Marcus, then back at Olivia. Does he really have a name already, or did you just make that up? Olivia grinned. I made it up in the car on the way here. You can rename him if you want. No, Zoe said, reaching for the octopus with one hand while keeping Gerald secure in the other. Professor Tentacles is a good name. And just like that, the ice broke. Within 20 minutes, Zoe and Olivia were sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by art supplies. Olivia had brought colored pencils, markers, watercolors, 2 sketch pads, and a set of pastels that Zoe looked at like they were made of gold. Tanya sat on the couch, pretending to look at her phone, but actually watching with an expression Marcus recognized. Protective but hopeful, the way she'd looked at every person who'd entered Zoe's life since Denise died. Marcus stayed in the kitchen, cooking spaghetti with hands that still ached, listening. What are you drawing? Olivia asked. My dad. He's a superhero. He doesn't have a cape. Real superheroes don't have capes. My mommy said that. She said superheroes just have brave hearts. A pause. Then Olivia's voice, softer. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was. She died, though. The matter-of-fact way Zoe said it always hit Marcus in the chest. No drama, no build-up, just truth, delivered with a brutal honesty only children are capable of. "I know," Olivia said. "My mom died too, when I was 14. Zoe stopped drawing. "She did?" "She had cancer. She was sick for a long time. My mom had lupus. Her body attacked itself. Daddy explained it to me. He said her insides got confused and started fighting the wrong things." "That's a really good way to explain it." Zoe was quiet for a moment. "Do you still miss her?" "Every single day." "Me too." Zoe picked up a blue pencil and started drawing again. "Daddy says missing someone means you loved them big. And big love doesn't go away just because someone does." In the kitchen, Marcus gripped the edge of the counter and breathed. He'd said that to Zoe one night when she couldn't sleep, 3 months after Denise died, making it up as he went because no parenting book teaches you how to explain death to a 5-year-old. He didn't know she'd kept those words. He didn't know she'd been carrying them like stones in her pocket, pulling them out when she needed them. "Daddy, the water's boiling over," Zoe called. Marcus grabbed the pot. Pain shot through his left hand. He hissed through his teeth but didn't drop it. "Let me help." Olivia was suddenly beside him, cane in one hand, reaching for the pot lid with the other. "I can't cook, but I can turn down a burner." "You're a guest." "I'm a guest with one working arm, standing in the kitchen of the man who saved my life. I think we're past formal rules." They cooked together. Or rather, Marcus cooked while Olivia handed him things, and Tanya supervised from the couch with running commentary. "More garlic, Marcus. Denise would have used more garlic." "Tanya, I'm using the same amount Denise used." "No, you're not. Denise used 4 cloves. You're using 2 because you're scared of garlic." "I'm not scared of garlic." "You are. You've always been scared of garlic. Olivia, tell this man to put more garlic in the sauce." Olivia held up her hand. "I'm staying out of this." "Smart girl," Tanya said. They ate at the small kitchen table. 4 people in a space built for 2, elbows bumping, plates crowded together. Zoe insisted Olivia sit next to her so she could show her drawings between bites of spaghetti. Tanya told stories about Marcus as a kid that made Olivia laugh and Marcus groan. Marcus listened to his daughter talk more in one meal than she'd talked in any single evening since Denise died. And he felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 2 years. After dinner, Zoe asked the question Marcus knew was coming.
"Olivia, are you the one my daddy saved?"
The table went quiet. Tanya set down her fork. Olivia looked at Marcus. "It's okay," he said. "She knows I helped someone. She doesn't know the details." Olivia turned to Zoe.
"Yes, your daddy saved me."
"From the fire?"
"From the fire."
Zoe looked at Marcus's bandaged hands, then at Olivia's cast. She was putting it together, connecting the pieces with the relentless logic of a 7-year-old mind.
"Is that how Daddy got hurt? Saving you?"
"Yes," Olivia said. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't look away. "Your daddy crawled into a burning car and pulled me out. He got hurt doing it, and I will never, ever be able to thank him enough." Zoe studied Olivia's face the way she sometimes studied Marcus's, searching for lies, for half-truths, for the kind of careful editing adults do when they think children can't handle the real thing.
"Are you okay now?"
Zoe asked.
"I'm getting better."
"My arm's broken and my head got hurt, but I'm getting better." "Good," Zoe nodded with finality. Then, "Do you want to see my room? I have more drawings in there." "I would love to see your room." Zoe took Olivia's good hand and led her down the hallway. Marcus heard the bedroom door open, heard Zoe launch into a breathless tour of her most prized possessions. Gerald's collection of outfits, the bookshelf Denise had painted with stars, the drawing of their family taped to the wall, that still included Denise because Zoe said,
"She's still in our family. She's just not in our house."
Tanya waited until they were out of earshot. Then she reached across the table and put her hand on Marcus's arm.
"That girl is real," Tanya said.
"I know."
"I mean it, Marcus. I've been sitting here all night waiting for the act to drop. The rich girl playing charity case, being nice because Daddy told her to. But that's not what this is."
She sat on your floor and drew pictures with your daughter for an hour and didn't check her phone once. She talked about her dead mother like a human being, not like a sad story she tells at fundraisers. She's real. I know, T. Zoe feels it. I can tell. She hasn't opened up like that to anyone since... Tanya stopped. Since Denise. Marcus nodded. His throat was too tight to speak. Don't mess this up, Tanya said. Mess what up? Whatever this is, this friendship, this connection, whatever it turns into. That girl needs people like you and Zoe in her life. And God knows you and Zoe need someone like her. So don't get in your own head. Don't let pride push her away. Don't do that thing you do where you convince yourself you don't deserve good things. I don't do that. Marcus, you kept Denise's coffee mug in the cabinet for 2 years because you thought using it meant you were moving on, and moving on meant you were forgetting her. You absolutely do that. He couldn't argue. She was right. She was always right. Big sisters were insufferable that way. Olivia stayed until 8:30. When it was time to leave, Zoe hugged her so hard that Olivia had to brace herself on her cane to keep from toppling over. Will you come back? Zoe asked. Do you want me to come back?
Yes, Thursday. Every Thursday. That can be our day.
Olivia looked at Marcus. He nodded. Then Thursday it is, Olivia said. At the door, after Zoe had been extracted and sent to brush her teeth, Olivia turned to Marcus. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. A tired, full, real smile.
Thank you, she said. For dinner. For letting me in.
Thank you for the art supplies. And Professor Tentacles. She's not going to let that octopus out of her sight.
Marcus,
Olivia's voice changed, lower, more serious. I need to tell you something. Okay. When I was in the hospital, before I knew who saved me, I had this nightmare. Every night. I was back in the car, the fire, the smoke. I couldn't move. And in the nightmare, nobody came. I just sat there and burned. She paused. But then the police showed me the report. They showed me what you did. The tire iron, the window, the seatbelt, the explosion. And that night, the nightmare changed. Someone came. I couldn't see his face, but someone came and pulled me out. And I stopped being afraid. Marcus didn't say anything. He just listened. I've been thinking about why, Olivia continued. Why did the nightmare change? And I think it's because knowing you existed, knowing that a man I'd never met chose to risk everything to save me. It rewired something in my brain. It changed what I believed about people, about the world. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. My dad is a good man. He built his life around protecting me. But even he couldn't protect me that day. You could. You did. And you didn't even know my name. I still almost drove away, Marcus said. He didn't know why he kept admitting that. Maybe because it felt dishonest not to. But you didn't. But I thought about it. Marcus, Olivia leaned on her cane and looked at him directly. Every hero thinks about it. That's what makes it a choice. If there was nothing to lose, it wouldn't be courage. It would just be reflex. You had everything to lose. You had Zoe. And you still got out of that truck.
She shook her head. Stop apologizing for being human. Being human is the whole point. She left. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of Zoe's electric toothbrush buzzing in the bathroom, and the hum of the refrigerator that always sounded louder at night. He walked to the kitchen cabinet, opened it, looked at Denise's mug. It sat where it always sat, white ceramic with a chip on the handle, and the words, "World's Best Mom," in faded letters that Zoe had painted at a pottery class when she was 4. Marcus reached for it. His damaged fingers closed around the handle. Not easily, not without pain, but they closed. He made a cup of coffee, poured it into Denise's mug, sat at the kitchen table in the quiet apartment where he'd raised their daughter alone for 2 years. He drank from it. It didn't bring Denise back. He knew it wouldn't. Nothing would ever bring her back, and some part of him would carry that absence like a stone in his chest for the rest of his life. But something about holding her mug, about feeling the warmth of the coffee through the ceramic, about sitting in the kitchen where she'd burn pancakes every Saturday morning because practice is the point. Something about all of that made him feel less like a man drowning, and more like a man who'd finally found the surface. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo of Denise. Summer, backyard, Zoe on her hip, laughing. She came tonight, Marcus said quietly. Olivia, the woman from the car. She sat on our floor and drew pictures with our daughter, and Zoe laughed, baby. She laughed the way she used to laugh when you were here. He paused, took a sip of coffee. I think you sent her. I know that sounds crazy. I know you'd tell me I'm being dramatic. But Zoe said angels have brave hearts. And you're the one who taught her that. So maybe you put me on that highway. Maybe you made sure I saw her hand move. Maybe this is your way of telling me it's okay to let people in again. He set the phone down, wiped his eyes. I'm still scared, Denise. I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. I'm scared Zoe's going to get attached and something's going to go wrong. I'm scared of the new job, the new salary, all of it. I've been invisible for so long, I don't know how to be seen. The apartment was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Down the hall, Zoe's toothbrush stopped buzzing. But I'm going to try, Marcus whispered. For Zoe, for you. I'm going to try.
Daddy? Zoe's voice came from the hallway. Are you talking to Mommy?
Marcus smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a guilty smile. A real one. Yeah, baby girl. I was. Zoe padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, Gerald in one arm and Professor Tentacles in the other. She climbed into the chair next to him and looked at the mug in his hands. You're using Mommy's cup, she said. Yeah, I am. That's good, Daddy. Mommy would want you to use it. She'd be mad if she knew you just left it in the cabinet. Marcus laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from a place that isn't broken anymore. Yeah, she probably would. Daddy? Yeah, baby? I like Olivia. I know you do. She's sad like us, but she's the good kind of sad. The kind where you know it's going to get better. Marcus pulled his daughter close with his scarred, bandaged, healing hands. She settled against him the way she always did, fitting perfectly into the space between his arm and his chest, like she was built for it. He kissed the top of her head and breathed in the smell of her shampoo and toothpaste and the particular warmth that was just Zoe, just his daughter, just the best thing he'd ever done. Yeah, baby girl, he said. The kind where you know it's going to get better. They sat like that for a long time, a father and his daughter, drinking the last of the coffee from a dead woman's mug, holding stuffed animals that represented the old life and the new one, letting the silence fill with something that wasn't grief for the first time in 2 years. It wasn't everything,
but it was a beginning. And beginnings, Marcus was learning, were built from exactly this. From small, brave choices made in kitchens and on highways. From letting people in when every instinct says to keep the door locked. From trusting that the universe sometimes puts you exactly where you need to be, even when where you need to be is on fire. Thursdays became sacred. Not in the way people use that word casually. Not sacred like a favorite TV show or a morning coffee routine. Sacred the way breathing is sacred. The way showing up for someone you love is sacred. Thursdays were the day Olivia came to dinner, and within 2 months, the apartment on Kendall Street felt different on Thursdays than it did on any other day of the week. Zoe started preparing on Wednesday nights. She'd lay out her clothes, organize her art supplies, make a list of things she wanted to tell Olivia. Things that happened at school, questions about animals, stories about dreams she'd had. The list was always longer than the evening could hold, but Olivia never once cut her short. She listened to every word like it mattered, because to her, it did. "Olivia, did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts?" Zoe asked on the 5th Thursday, cross-legged on the living room floor, Professor Tentacles in her lap. "I did know that, and if they lose an arm, it grows back. I wish people could do that. Daddy's fingers don't work all the way, and they're not growing back." "No," Olivia said carefully. "People don't regrow parts, but people heal in other ways." Zoe thought about that. "Like how Daddy's laugh came back?" Olivia looked across the room at Marcus, who was standing in the kitchen pretending he hadn't heard. Their eyes met. She smiled. He turned back to the stove. "Yeah," Olivia said, "exactly like that." Marcus's new position started on the 1st of the month. Facilities Director.
Corner office on the 4th floor. Not the top floor. Not the executive wing. But 4 floors above the basement where he'd spent 5 years with a wrench in his hand. The office had a window. Marcus had never had a window at work before. He stood in front of it for 10 minutes on his first morning, looking out at the parking lot, feeling like an imposter in a borrowed suit. Roger was the first person to visit. He showed up with 2 cups of coffee and sat in the chair across from Marcus's desk without being invited. "Nice view," Roger said. "Parking lot. Better than the boiler room." "Anything's better than the boiler room." Roger handed him a coffee. "How's the first day?" "I don't know what I'm doing, Roger." "Nobody knows what they're doing on the first day. You figure it out." "I'm a maintenance worker. I fix things. Pipes, heaters, busted toilets. Now I've got a budget spreadsheet and a staff of 32 people, and a meeting with the VP of Operations at noon, and I don't even own a tie." Roger reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a tie. Navy blue, simple. He set it on the desk. "Catherine gave it to my wife for my birthday 6 years ago. She said every man needs a good tie. I figured she'd want you to have it." Marcus picked up the tie. "Roger, I can't." "You can, and you will. Don't make it weird." Roger stood up. "Listen, you've been leading people your whole life. You led a crew in the basement. You led Zoe through losing her mother. You led yourself into a burning car when every sane person would have walked away. This job isn't about spreadsheets. It's about people. And there's nobody in this building who's better with people than you." Marcus wore the tie to his noon meeting. He didn't know how to tie it properly. Denise had always done it for him. So he watched a video on his phone in the bathroom and did it himself with fingers that still ached when they gripped too tight. The meeting went fine. Better than fine. The VP of Operations, a woman named Sandra Chen, spent an hour walking him through budget forecasts and departmental priorities, and then said, "Marcus, Richard told me your background. I want you to know that your experience on the ground level is exactly what this department has been missing. We've had directors who could read spreadsheets.
We've never had one who could read people."
Marcus went home that night and told Zoe he survived his first day.
"Did you wear the tie?" she asked.
"I wore the tie."
"Did you look handsome?"
"I looked extremely handsome."
"I knew it."
She climbed into his lap with Gerald and Professor Tentacles.
"Daddy, are you going to be in charge of people now?"
"Some people. The maintenance team, the facility staff."
"Are you going to be nice to them?"
"I'm going to try."
"Be the kind of boss Mommy would be proud of."
Marcus's throat tightened. "That's the plan, baby girl." And it was. Every decision Marcus made in his new role, he filtered through one question. What would Denise do? Denise, who tipped 30% at restaurants they couldn't afford because those people are working harder than we are. Denise, who brought soup to every sick neighbor on the block and never mentioned it afterward. Denise, who believed that how you treat people who can't do anything for you is the only measure of character that matters. Marcus discovered within his first month that Langford Corp had a problem nobody on the upper floors knew about. 3 employees in the custodial department were working double shifts because they couldn't afford childcare. 2 warehouse workers had been coming to work sick because they didn't have enough paid leave to cover a flu. A woman in the mailroom had been sleeping in her car for 2 weeks because her landlord had evicted her, and she was too afraid to tell anyone. Marcus found out because he went to the basement. He went to the warehouse. He went to the mailroom. He walked the floors that executives never walked, and talked to people that executives never talked to, and asked the question that nobody ever asked. What do you need? He brought his findings to Richard Langford on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks into the job. He sat across from the CEO's desk with a folder full of notes and names and stories, and he laid it out. Every problem, every person, every failure of the system to catch people who were falling. "Mr. Langford, you've got 1,400 employees in this building. Most of them are doing fine, but the ones who aren't, they're invisible. The same way I was invisible. They come in, they do their work, they go home, and nobody notices when they're drowning." Richard leaned back in his chair. "What do you recommend? An employee welfare fund, emergency assistance for workers in crisis, childcare subsidies for single parents, a partnership with the shelter network so people who lose housing have somewhere to go that isn't their car." Marcus paused. "And I want to run it personally, not delegate it, not hand it to HR. I want to be the person people come to, because people don't come to departments. They come to other people." Richard studied him for a long moment. "How much?" $200,000 a year to start. We can scale it based on utilization." "You've only been in this role for 3 weeks, and you're already asking me for $200,000? "Yes, sir, I am." Richard smiled. It was the first time Marcus had seen the man smile without sadness behind it. "Approved. Build it. Show me what happens when someone who actually understands gives a damn." Marcus built it. He called it the Open Door Fund, because Denise used to say that the difference between people who get help and people who don't is whether someone leaves a door open for them. Within 3 months, the fund had helped 11 employees. The woman from the mailroom had an apartment. The custodial workers had subsidized childcare. The warehouse workers had expanded sick leave. Word spread through the building the way it does in any workplace. Not through memos or announcements, but through whispers. Through the custodian who told the security guard, who told the receptionist, who told the accountant. People started coming to Marcus's office not because they were in crisis, but because they wanted to talk about their kids, their mortgages, their aging parents, their fears. They came because Marcus listened. He listened the way Denise had taught him to listen. Not to fix, but to witness. To say, "I hear you," and mean it. Olivia saw the change in him.
On a Thursday evening in February, 4 months after the accident, she sat at the kitchen table while Zoe colored in the living room and said, "You're different." "Different how?" "When I met you in my dad's office, you were holding yourself together with tape and willpower. Like, if you stopped moving, you'd fall apart. You don't look like that anymore." "How do I look now?" "Like you finally believe you're allowed to be here." Marcus didn't answer right away. He poured coffee into Denise's mug, he used it every day now, and sat across from Olivia. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." For 2 years after Denise died, I felt like I was borrowing time. Like the life I was living wasn't really mine. I was just holding Zoe's place, keeping things running until... I don't know. Until what? Until she was old enough to not need me? Until the grief got smaller? It never got smaller. I just got used to carrying it.
And now? Now it's different. Not smaller, just different. Like the weight shifted. It's still there, but it's not the only thing I'm carrying anymore. I'm carrying other things too. Good things. The job. Zoe getting better. You.
Olivia's eyes softened.
"Me?"
You. Tanya would kill me for saying this, but you changed something in this house. Zoe talks now. She laughs. She makes plans for the future. Last week she told me she wants to be a feelings doctor when she grows up. She got that from you. She got that from herself. I just showed her it was an option. That's what I mean. You showed her options exist. For 2 years, this family was just surviving, getting through the next day, the next bill, the next nightmare. You showed Zoe, you showed me, that there's something on the other side of survival, that you're allowed to want more than just getting through. Olivia reached across the table and put her hand over his scarred one.
Her cast was off now, her arm still weak, but healing.
"You showed me the same thing, Marcus. Before the accident, I was going through the motions. Rich girl with a dead mom, volunteering at shelters to fill the hole, getting a degree I wasn't sure I'd use. I had everything, and it all felt empty." She squeezed his hand gently. "Then I woke up in a hospital and found out a stranger had set himself on fire to keep me alive. And I thought, if someone can love a stranger that much, what's my excuse for not loving my own life?" 6 months after the accident, Richard Langford hosted the annual company gala at the Denver Art Museum. Marcus found out he was receiving an award 3 days before the event, which he felt was intentionally short notice, so he couldn't find a way to get out of it. "I'm not giving a speech," he told Olivia on the phone. "Nobody's asking you to give a speech." "Good. My dad's giving the speech. You just have to stand there and look heroic."
I don't look heroic. I look like a maintenance worker in a rented tuxedo. You look like a man who saved someone's life. Wear the tuxedo. He wore the tuxedo. Tanya helped him with the bow tie because his fingers still couldn't manage the loops. Zoe supervised from the couch, providing commentary.
"Daddy, you look like James Bond."
"Thank you, baby."
"But a better James Bond. Because James Bond doesn't have a daughter, and daughters make everything better."
"Can't argue with that logic."
"Daddy, are you scared?"
Terrified. She grinned. The Denise grin.
"Good. That means you're about to be brave."
The gala was 500 people, in a room full of evening gowns and expensive suits and chandeliers, and the kind of food Marcus couldn't pronounce. He stood backstage with Zoe, who had insisted on coming, and was wearing a purple dress Olivia had helped her pick out. And he listened to Richard Langford's voice carrying through the sound system.
Ladies and gentlemen, this company was built on the principle that every person matters. We say it in our mission statement. We print it on our walls. But 6 months ago, one of our employees showed us what that principle actually looks like. when it's not just words on a wall. It looks like a man in a maintenance uniform running toward a fire, while everyone else runs away. Marcus felt Zoe's hand slip into his, small fingers wrapping around his scarred ones, holding tight. This man worked in our basement for 5 years. He fixed our pipes, our boilers, our heating systems. He came early. He stayed late. He never complained. He never asked for recognition. And most of us, myself included, never knew his name. Richard paused. Marcus could hear the weight in the silence. That is a failure I own. And it is a failure this company will never repeat.
Daddy, he's talking about you,
Zoe whispered.
I know, baby.
Are you crying?
No.
You look like you're crying. I'm not crying. My eyes are just doing something. That's crying, Daddy, Richard continued. 6 months ago, Marcus Williams pulled my daughter from a burning car on Interstate 70. He broke through a window with a tire iron. He cut through a seatbelt with a pocket knife. He shielded her from an explosion with his own body. He suffered second-degree burns, nerve damage to his hands, and dozens of lacerations. And when the paramedics arrived, do you know what he said? Richard's voice cracked. He said, "Take care of her first." The room was absolutely silent. 500 people and not a sound. Tonight, I'm honored to present Marcus Williams with Langford Corp's first annual Courage Award. But I'm even more honored to announce the establishment of the Denise Williams Memorial Scholarship Fund. Marcus's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the curtain. Zoe gripped his hand tighter. This fund, named for Marcus's late wife, will provide full educational scholarships for children who have lost parents. Because Marcus taught us something that no business school, no leadership seminar, no corporate retreat could ever teach. He taught us that when you show up for people, truly show up, at cost to yourself, with no expectation of return, you don't just save one life. You change what's possible for everyone.
Daddy, they said Mommy's name,
Zoe said, and her voice was full of wonder, not sadness.
Everybody heard Mommy's name.
Marcus couldn't speak. He dropped to one knee and held his daughter, held her so tight she squeaked. And he cried into her shoulder, while 500 people waited for him on the other side of a curtain. He cried for Denise, who should have been here. He cried for the man he'd been 6 months ago, sitting in a dark kitchen staring at bills he couldn't pay, whispering to a photo on a phone. He cried for the man he was now, still scared, still scarred, still figuring it out, but standing in a tuxedo with his daughter in his arms and his wife's name in the air and a room full of people about to clap for a maintenance worker who once thought he was invisible. "Okay," he said, wiping his face, straightening his bow tie, squeezing Zoe's hand. "Let's go."
Together?
Together. They walked onto the stage. 500 people rose to their feet. The applause hit Marcus like a wave, physical, overwhelming, so loud it vibrated in his chest. Zoe held his hand and waved at the audience with the other, completely unafraid, completely herself. And Marcus thought, "Denise, if you can see this, look at what you made. Look at this child. Look at what your love built." Richard handed him a crystal award. Marcus held it in his scarred hands and looked at the engraving. For extraordinary courage in the service of others. He looked at Richard, whose eyes were wet. He looked at Olivia in the front row, crying openly, her hand pressed to her heart. He looked at Tanya beside her, mascara running, mouthing the words, "I'm so proud of you." He looked at Roger, standing in the back row in a suit that didn't fit, clapping harder than anyone in the room. And then he looked at Zoe, his daughter, his reason,
His proof that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes shape.
"I'm not good at speeches," Marcus said into the microphone. The applause died down. 500 people waited. My wife Denise was the talker. She could talk to anyone about anything for hours. I'm the quiet one. I fix things. That's what I do. He looked at the crystal award in his hands. 6 months ago, I made a choice. It wasn't a brave choice. It was just the only choice I could live with. A woman was dying, and I could help. So I helped. That's not heroism. That's just being a person. He paused. The room was so quiet he could hear the air conditioning. But I want to say something about the people who don't make the news. The people in this building who show up every day and do their jobs and go home to their families and never get a standing ovation. The woman in the mailroom who works 2 shifts so her son can play basketball. The custodian who learns every employee's name because he believes in treating people like they matter. The single mothers and the tired fathers and the people who are one bad month away from losing everything, but still show up with a smile because their kids are watching. Marcus looked directly at Roger in the back row. Those are the heroes, not me. I did one thing, one time. Those people do it every day. And if this award means anything, I want it to mean that we see them. That we stop walking past people who keep this building standing and start treating them like they matter. Because they do. Denise knew that. She knew it before I did. She used to say, "Love means showing up for people, even when it costs everything." She showed up for me every day of her life, and I'd like to spend the rest of mine trying to be worthy of that. The applause that followed shook the room. Marcus didn't hear most of it. He was looking at Zoe, who was beaming up at him with tears on her cheeks and pride in her eyes. And he was thinking about a morning 6 months ago when she'd said, "Come home safe today, Daddy." And he'd promised her he always would. He'd kept that promise. Not easily. Not without scars. But he'd kept it. 1 year later, Marcus dropped Zoe at school on a Tuesday morning in October. The leaves were turning. The air had that sharp Colorado edge that meant winter was thinking about showing up. He drove a new car. Richard had insisted, and Marcus had fought him for 3 weeks before Tanya told him to stop being stubborn and accept the gift. Zoe was 8 now. Taller. Louder. Her braids were immaculate because Olivia had learned to do them. Badly at first, then better, then well enough that Zoe grudgingly admitted they were almost as good as Aunt Tanya's. She still carried Gerald everywhere, but Professor Tentacles had a permanent place on her bed beside him, and Marcus sometimes heard her at night telling both of them about her day, dividing the conversation equally between the old companion and the new one. She grabbed her rainbow backpack and leaned across the seat. "Love you to the sky, Daddy. And past the stars, baby girl." She opened the door, then stopped, turned back, looked at him with those eyes, Denise's eyes, deep and knowing and full of a wisdom that had no business belonging to an 8-year-old. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for being brave that day." Marcus swallowed. "Which day?" "You know which day. The day you saved Olivia. The day you almost didn't come home." She held his gaze. "I'm glad you got out of the truck."
"Me too, baby. Mommy would be glad too. I know she would."
Zoe smiled, hopped out, skipped toward the school entrance, rainbow backpack bouncing, braids flying, legs carrying her forward into a future that existed because her father had made a choice on a rainy highway 1 year ago. Marcus watched until she disappeared through the doors. Then he sat in the car for a moment, hands on the wheel. Scarred hands, healed hands, hands that still ached on cold mornings but could grip a coffee mug and tie a bow tie and hold his daughter when she needed holding.
He drove toward Langford Corp., toward his office on the 4th floor, toward another day of doing the work Denise would have been proud of, building something real from the wreckage of the worst and best morning of his life. The scars on his back and hands had faded, but never disappeared. He didn't want them to. They were proof. Proof that sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be.
Proof that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's a 7-year-old girl saying, "Come home safe," and a man choosing to deserve those words. Proof that the people who change your life are sometimes the ones you've never met, and the family you're meant to have is sometimes the family you pull from the fire. Marcus Williams, son of a janitor, widower, single father, maintenance worker turned facilities director, a man who'd been invisible for 5 years in a building that now bore a scholarship in his wife's name, drove to work on a Tuesday morning and felt, for the first time in as long as he could remember, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not because the job was perfect, not because the grief was gone, not because the story had a neat ending with a bow on top, but because he'd learned something on that highway, something Denise had tried to tell him for years, and he'd only understood when he was crawling through a burning car with a pocket knife in his teeth and his daughter's voice in his head. Love is not safe. Love was never meant to be safe. Love is a man getting out of a truck when everything inside him screams to stay. Love is a little girl tying her father's shoes when his hands don't work. Love is a stranger becoming family. Love is showing up again and again for the people in front of you, even when it costs you everything you have. Denise knew that. She lived it. She died still believing it. And now Marcus believed it too. Not because he was a hero. Heroes are in movies and comic books and bedtime stories. Marcus was just a man, a father, a human being who saw another human being trapped in a fire and couldn't look away. That was enough. That had always been enough. And somewhere, in a garden with yellow flowers, behind glass that was thinner than it used to be, Denise Williams was watching, and she was proud.